Let the record show that all directors are in attendance, and we have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So do we have an item?
Oh, thank you. I should know this. I requested it. Sorry.
So, we have an item that has arisen in the last couple of days for an event this weekend regarding fuel purchases. And so, if we could add to action items 4C, fuel pricing for,
The Mojave experimental client.
and as I said, distillerize after we posted the agenda in the event is this weekend.
Move to approve the agenda with the addition of item 4C.
Second. Motion by Mr. Parker and second by Mr. Deaver, and I apologize. I forgot all about that, and I knew about it. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion passes. The agenda is adopted. Are there any community announcements? Being none, we move to item 3, consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ballentine, second by Mr. Parker. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Were you an aye, Mr. Allred?
I was an aye.
Motion passes unanimously, even though you were late. Thank you. We move to 4A, staff report, please.
Good afternoon, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie for the report of the employee handbook.
Well, the employee handbook, as we brought to you a couple meetings ago in regards to that it needed to be revised just due to the new personnel policy that we adopted into with the board. And it had been long overdue, so we had updated it, worked with Scott. And you'll notice I did also, this came up after the employee handbook was posted, just some changes to the verbiage in section 8.1 that I put at your guys' board seat. But there's just a couple changes that we were making to some of the employee benefits, and I've highlighted them on the staff memo. But for the most part, everything remained the same, just kind of updated it, got the formatting squared away. And we'll meet with all the employees and have them sign it in the paper.
Okay, are there any questions for staff on the board? Is there any public comment on this item? All right, the chair will then entertain a motion if there is one.
Motion to.
I got it.
Go ahead.
Is that typical language determinated for no or any reason, for no reason? Is that common to use that? Yep. For no reason.
Okay. Usually it's for any or no reason is how it's worded, but because we give examples of why there may be termination, I just reverse those to for no reason or any reason.
Okay. I'm fine with this. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Deaver?
Yeah, I guess so.
To approve.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Parker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion passes. We have a new updated employee handbook. Woo-hoo.
How many people read that start to finish?
I did.
I did.
I did several times.
Several times. I missed the word.
Yeah. I've read so many employee handbooks the last year. It's just
It's
incredible.
like saying I will well.
We all will.
I mean, we realize, Mr. Deaver, we realize that Congress is not capable of reading a 37-page document, but we are.
Yeah, that's my experience, that's why I asked.
There you go. I knew that. All right. 4B, please, staff report.
So we have an opportunity here to purchase a used fire truck for $128,000. Normally these trucks run anywhere from, I'd say $200,000, $400,000 for a refurbished truck. This one is technically not refurbished. We've gone back and forth with CAL FIRE, who technically owns the truck. Clint, who's the mechanic who's been doing a lot of work with us for the past 25 years, was out here yesterday. I talked to them personally. He feels like this truck would last us quite some time. It's got high mileage, which is why the price is lower than it normally would be. Most airports, they run their trucks a lot more than we do. We put maybe 100 or 200 miles on our trucks a year. So we feel like the truck would last us quite some time. We think it's a good, smart purchase. We have basically until May 1st before it turns back over to CAL FIRE and goes back out to lease. At that point, we'll lose the opportunity for this particular truck. So we've got 2 crash trucks right now in the fire department. One of them we own, one of them technically the county owns. It's on a loan program. they can come back and recall at any time. And this was a threat about 2 years ago when the new chief came in and started asking about possibly taking the equipment back. So we realized very quickly we need to get something set aside for a truck purchase that we can control.
So when we buy this from Cal Fire, we're under more obligation to loan it to them.
Nope.
It's ours.
It's our truck. It's our truck.
How many miles does it have?
Is Jennifer here? Do you remember?
It had approximately, it had over 100,000 miles on it. I have that email, and I can get that answer to you.
That's fine, because when you talk a couple of hundred a year, I thought, well.
Over 100, under 200?
Yes, sir.
It's just broke in.
Right, it's got a new pump on it, so in the last 4 or 5 years, they put a new pump on it, so it's really just the truck itself. But mechanically, it's very sound, it's in Texas, we have to have it delivered up from Texas. So because we basically have until the end of the month to close the deal if we chose to get it, what I'm asking for is permission to finalize the agreement and sign the check.
I have a question. There's a lot of paperwork in here about it being refurbished.
So it's technically not a refurbished truck. There are some refurbished parts on it,
Yeah.
but it's technically not.
But they went through it, this outfit, Texas went through it and
Yes.
checked it over. That's fine.
Well, we need to invest any money once we get it to
I'm just
outfit it, to paint it, I don't know.
I'm just having flashbacks, not of personal experience, but of, that $15,000 1980 Cessna 310. That, you got 15 grand, but to make it flyable, you gotta put in 400,000, and then you have a $120,000 airplane.
That's worth 60?
Yeah, that's for 60. Yeah.
So I have had
It's
this
a fire
conversation with Clint, because when this first came across my desk, the proposal was, a certain amount for the truck and then a certain amount for upgrades. And I've talked to Clint personally about what he feels like would be required for an upgrade. So we've got $20,000 worth of upgrades in there. That gets us the truck we need. We will probably put the decals on there, and we'll have your Spaceport, but other than that, we don't foresee investing any more money into the truck.
Are we gonna de-equipment one of the other trucks and put all that equipment into this truck?
So what we'll probably do is throw both of these trucks in the firehouse. We need to come up with a longer term solution about expanding the fire capability here at the airport, and that's a conversation for another day. We'll probably keep the Crash 2 truck, which is the county's truck, outside. Use this as the primary truck and use Crash 2 as the backup, because Crash 2 is the one that's going to go first. Mechanically, it might last another couple of years.
Crash 2's gonna crash 1.
That's correct.
Good, sounds good to me.
So,
Any public comment?
Coming
Yes, sir.
from a city that got burned by KME on a used fire truck, I don't know.
Oh, what city was that?
Cali, yeah.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
You guys exempt from all the diesel California exempt policies? We're having to change out all our power units because they're not CARB compliant. All our ground power units, we're having to turn them
That's
in.
right,
That's a good question,
know.
because I know a lot of the road
I don't know,
trucks are
because you're a
having to put
county
air
or-
scrubbers on them and
It's
DEF.
really affecting us because we're
Yeah.
turning in units that are $40,000 because
Well, and I've heard
it's
the
not cost effective
retrofits
to
are
change the
horrible.
engines out.
When you take an old engine and you put that DEF retrofit on, it's just a nightmare. They don't run right, they run hot, there's just problems.
these state requirements?
Yes,
Okay, I'll investigate that.
Even
Anything
off-road
anything
equipment.
over a certain horsepower, it applies to.
even off-road equipment's required now.
Yeah, like I said, all our ground power units, it's affected them.
Okay. We'll definitely investigate that. Floyd, he's not here, he may know.
Must live in
He might know.
We're not immune to
Other
those,
than
to those, but
deregulations.
there's still a price difference between 128,000 up to 400,000 for refurbished, and then you're looking at 800,000 to 1.2 million for a brand new one.
Yeah.
There's still quite a bit of cost savings there to be realized.
I believe those retrofits run anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 to make them California carbon compliant.
Okay. I'll definitely chase that down.
I know the city of Cal City had to deal with it on a water truck and some other stuff. They had to put these air scrubbers and catalytic converters and stuff on their road trucks.
All right. Any further questions?
I move we approve the, do you want that or you just want authority to, how do you want to
let's see.
word the motion?
So we need to CO to finalize the purchase agreement issued and sign a check.
I move to, we do that.
I have a motion by Mr. Deaver regarding staff's recommendation.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballentine. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Keeping our fingers crossed.
So item C, which is the item we just added. So every year, we host this Mojave experimental fly-in. It started,
About 4 years ago, Kathy put out an email today, I think it, what's his name, started about 4 years ago. Eric, Elliot, yeah.
so it first happened as a scaled recruiting thing, back in like 2010 or something
Yeah.
like that. And then from there, I think Elliot took it over as the Mojave experimental fly-in. It's been running now as this event for about 6 years. Elliot has, just doesn't have the bandwidth to do it anymore, so Kathy's taking it on now in combination with Plain Crazy. And then a number of folks, including Rick, are volunteering to help with the event as well. We're contributing like we have in the past with having the tower open, having our fire department here, additional security. But I do have an additional request. We're really trying to help promote general aviation as a whole. And I've had some conversations with AOPA about possibly hosting events and that kind of thing here. And one of the folks that I talked to at AOPA said, what's usually more effective than having a flying type event is just discounting your fuel. So what I'd love to be able to do as a participant in the Mojave experimental flying is discount the fuel for 2 days, blast it out on press and on social media, say Friday and Saturday only, Mojave or Spaceport, app gas is 50 cents off. So that's my request, is we limit it to those 2 days. We limit it to app gas only for 50 cents.
50 cents a gallon?
50 cents off.
But where did you come up with that 50-cent number?
I want to make sure that we keep it above the cost of the fuel itself slightly, and this would be very slightly.
I tried to do a quick search and got distracted, because I don't think that's gonna even put us, some of the competitive rates around it, I don't even know that. I needed to go back and look at exactly what are we getting now, and
Yeah, if it was lower than that, then we'd be below cost.
And then we can go to jail.
Which would be good. Yeah. So we've been paying a lot of attention to ag gas in particular in the area. We're trying to be more market sensitive. And so we're currently pricing it at about 50 cents above cost of fuel, just to cover some of our overhead. I mean, we've got the fuel trucks, the fuelers, a lot of additional costs.
I think we have an obligation to lower our costs.
Yeah, so that's why I'm requesting 50 cents, because that would be right about.
That's great. I think we should have broadcasted it a month ago.
Okay.
But our pilots might want to
Sorry to think about it
empty the
earlier.
tanks.
We had a planning meeting last week, and that was just one of the things that we kind of brainstormed, so.
We're also gonna have some people from Van's RV up here. We just found out about it today. Kathy sent out an email. It's a big deal. It's the biggest, one of the biggest plane crazy of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question for the council. So I have a question. So, are you ready for this?
I think I am.
Okay, I hope you are. So,
You can't buy gas.
yeah. So this is a case, I don't think that the board should get involved in the setting of price on a day-to-day basis. The board is given a budget at the beginning of the fiscal year in which we were given a forecast, more or less, in dollars and gallons of what the expected sales are for the course of the year. We approved that. And that's what it says in our administrative code, that we approve the sales for the year. Okay, to me, that's what we've done. We've done that.
There's another line though.
Yeah, I know that. So, but that's, and I may agree or disagree with that line, but that's not really gonna be that's really not gonna be the focus of the question. So, I believe this is an operational issue. This is an issue which the CEO should have pretty much carte blanche authority within the scope of his or her responsibility within budgetary restraints. So I'm gonna ask this question, I'm gonna give you a scenario. You get, let's say we have our underground fuel tanks or above ground fuel tanks are full with fuel that we purchased at $6 a gallon. We're not allowed to sell that below cost in theory from what I'm hearing. But next month there's a oversupply of oil in the world market, and we can now get gas at $4 a gallon. We're stuck with $6 gas. Why wouldn't we be able to sell that at a loss, get the new gas at a cheaper price, blend the rate, and we're still dollars ahead? I have a problem with this concept that the CEO can't do something at a loss. Let me give you another example. I'll give you another example. Well, I'm gonna give you the car dealer example. Hang on. I'm gonna give you the car dealer example. Hang on. So, in my company, we don't tell the general sales managers how much to sell the cars for. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
they know.
where is this dealership?
We don't. They know it's based on market. But we get to the end of the month, and he needs to sell 2 more cars to meet a factory number. And if he gets he can sell those 2 cars. He might sell them at, let's say they're $10,000 losers each. So he loses $20,000. But he gets the extra 2 units, and the factory pays him $25,000. So he sold something at a loss, but he made up for it in the overall scheme of things when he got the factory money. So he was ahead $5,000. So my point is there are business reasons. There are times where there are business reasons where we have to do this sort of thing. This entity, while it is a government entity, it is also a business entity. And the services of this airport are expected to be made up in the course of its business operations. The fuel operation is a business operation, in my mind, not a governmental operation. The point I'm driving at is this seems too cumbersome. I would like to know what the law is on this, if there is a law, and I'd like to know how it's applicable here, and I'd like to know if we can go forward with some sort of amendment in our administrative code where we can give the CEO broad authority to conduct the operation as might be necessary from week to week, because it changes year on.
There are 2 distinct issues that we raised. One is selling fuel below cost. The other is the CEO's authority. So let me take the fuel sales first. California has an Unfair Business Practices Act. It applies in part to public agencies. Not entirely, but in part. That law prevents public agencies, especially when they're running as an enterprise agency, from undercutting the market below cost. Taxpayers are then subsidizing the purchase of those services by private parties, and the government frowns on that in general. That is not to say you cannot have sales. That is not to say that there aren't situations where you may be able to take losses. But in general, on a day-to-day basis, you cannot sell below market, below your cost, in order to compete with private or other public agencies who are in the same market.
And I agree with that 1,000%.
So,
I don't want government competing against private industry.
so number one, that is why you can't sell at a loss on a regular basis. Not to say you can't have sales.
You keep throwing qualifiers, though, into your comment. You can't sell a loss on a regular basis. But what does that mean?
So, Jimmy will probably remember this. Back in 2010 or 2011, we went through this exercise.
You'll recognize the name.
Yeah.
And we received a complaint from a local lawyer who's affiliated with another nearby airport that we were undercutting their fuel sales, and that was a violation of California law, blah, 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 blah. So we went through the steps of figuring out what our costs were in terms of sales, and I believe Harold is the one who headed that up, and what's the cost for the fuel, what are our labor costs, what are the cost to maintain the equipment, we had a fuel truck. We did all of that and figured out what the airport's costs were, on top of just the straight cost of finding fuel. And the board determined that the price for fuel going forward would include all of those costs that are incurred by the district. Insurance, everything, so that we were not losing money and thereby subsidizing through public funds sales to private parties. And that we were complying with the Unfair Competition Act. So now, this weekend you have a special event, and you've been asked to approve the discounting of the price for fuel. And this is for a limited purpose, with a special event. You're still not selling below your cost, though you're reducing your profit margin. Right? So that's okay.
Well, couldn't you say that also on a month-to-month basis or a
Week to
year-to-year
week, year to
basis?
year.
You know,
Yeah, how
we're
about
gonna
every
sell
plain
for
crazy
$1 a
Saturday?
gallon cheaper this weekend, but in the other 4 weeks of the month,
Yeah.
we're gonna make that up and still overall have a profit for this month.
As long as you are not violating the unfair competition law by selling below your cost, that
But
is
that
fine.
could- that would be
cumulative for the month,
Weekly,
correct?
annual per tank that
Yeah.
we've purchased?
Right, that's the
So-
question.
So how do you gauge that? And this is where you get into the CEO's authority, which is the second issue. The board's admin code has laid out the CEO's authority to discount fuel prices. And there are two situations in which the CEO, GM, may authorize a discounted price. One involves Jet A, and I forget exactly what the
10,000.
parameters were. Is it 10? Because the other is a purchase of a large quantity of fuel, which was not
I
Jet
thought
A.
they were tied together.
No, they're two separate provisions in the admin code. One's for Jet A, and one is, no.
For volume,
Yeah.
okay.
So, the board has already delegated the authority that it felt was appropriate for the CEO to set pricing. If the board wishes to change that authority, that's entirely the board's prerogative, and you may do so. But as of now, those parameters are already laid out in your admin code.
So my question would be, does she have the authority right now without this being on our agenda?
No, because it says that the board
why
will
it's
set
here.
that. That needs, well,
My interpretation of the admin code is that the CEO does not have authority because the second situation in which the CEO can discount fuel prices related to a single buyer purchasing large quantities of fuel. And that, if I recall correctly, was when you were doing some 747 testing here, and they were coming in and they were refueling the 747 on a fairly regular
Yeah,
basis.
GE is the only company that qualified for that tier program back in the day.
Yes, so those were the situations that the board at that point in time had in mind when they put that provision in the admin code. We can change it if you would like.
Well, you come today, you ask to get, and I'm just speaking for myself, you're asking to get my approval, 1 vote out of 5, to approve a reduction in the price, because we can't sell below cost unless nobody's told me what the cost per gallon of fuel is, nobody told me what we're gonna sell at. And so you're making me make a choice, I don't have the information. And I'm not faulting anybody on that, it's just that this process seems to be ludicrous.
well,
In
the
my
admin
opinion.
code needs to be addressed, and I think that solves the.
So,
And so I have another question from a legal standpoint. So is it your argument then, or the argument of whoever in Sacramento that makes these rules, we have people that come in, they purchase fuel, they pay the full price, let's say it's $5.75 a gallon, okay, it's priced in there with all of our costs, it covers the cost of the fuel that we bought, it covers our cost of manpower to fill the planes up, do whatever. Are we asserting then, or is Sacramento asserting the fact that that is somehow, that is government tax dollars that would be competing against others?
sure it is.
It
So
is.
you have two sources of revenue.
I know I do.
You're a governmental agency. You are also what is called an enterprise
Yes.
agency, meaning your revenue does not come solely from tax funds. all right? So you make money from leases, fuel sales, so on and so forth. But you also get money from real property taxes.
And that's right, but if you're
All of
gonna,
that money goes into your general fund,
then everything is everything here is subsidized by the government.
that's why there's nothing
And
that's
if we
below cost.
can't compete, then we need to shut down.
That's why.
Because that's the argument that the state's trying to give us.
So there are two legal issues regarding the use of tax funds. And one of them has been California law since the 1850s. And that is, you cannot use public funds, you cannot gift it, loan it, transfer it for the benefit of a private party.
Well, let me tell you something, when I come here and I take out my credit card that I cut my check for, and I pay for the gas here, it's not public funds, it's David Evans funds.
I know, but all that money goes into the same bank account as your property taxes. You don't segregate them at
What if
all.
we segregated?
Arguably, if you segregated them, then the gift of public funds issue would not apply, but the Unfair Competition Act still applies,
All
regardless.
of my
of
money,
the-
everybody's money belongs to the government. Okay, I have no further questions, thank you.
Okay, I've had complaints from landowners, people who own rental property in this town, that we
So I think,
undercut
I know
them
your point, exactly.
by charging lower rents than they can charge in town. So, I mean, that's, people, it's called a gift of public funds. My question is, can Karina do what she wants to do, or?
The board has to
We have
approve it for this
Okay,
weekend.
make a
But
motion.
Bill, your issue is that, because this is related, but it's distinct.
Yeah,
And that is, private landlords generally include real property taxes in their
Right.
rental rates. You guys don't pay real property taxes.
yes, but the county requires that you pay, if you rent from us, you have to pay, what's the
The
term?
renter pays it.
So as such,
Yeah,
the state adopted a
Unsecured
law
property tax.
that requires tenants of public property to pay a possessory interest tax.
yeah, because they're receiving
which
the
is
same
supposed to
services as
level the
everybody
playing
else.
field with the private
Right.
landlords. So your rents may be lower because they don't include real property taxes, but the county still comes in on its own.
Right,
It's not in your rental rate,
No, I
but
know
tenants
it.
still pay it.
yeah, but
So are your rental rates really below?
this was several years ago, I think we're up pretty squared away now.
Well, in several years ago, the county finally started collecting possessory
Yeah, I
interest
know.
tax.
Yeah, I didn't pay it for years, and then I got a bill for
About 2009,
I got a bill on
2010.
my hanger for $120, and that leveled the field, I guess.
It was before
Well-
that, because I got it in Cal City before that.
When the Great Recession hit,
Yeah.
then the government, so 2008, 2009, 2010, the Kern County made a concerted effort to go out and start collecting possessory interest taxes.
They were actually going around cutting locks off of hangers to see what was inside.
They
Well-
had issues here with the county.
All right, my fault.
Excuse me, let me just make a comment that back in the 1960s, two friends of mine and I rented a little building here on the airport. I can't remember where. We had some great idea we were gonna do. And about 2 weeks after we rented it, we got a notice from the county, we're gonna have to pay PIT.
Yep.
And my friends panicked out and we stopped our lease, which is probably the smartest thing we did. But I mean, it's not just something recent, it's been around for a long time. And that was under the Savage regime.
So it's my fault, we strayed from the topic.
But you raise an important issue.
Well, of course I do.
That is an exercise that we've gone through before, and that is, what are our costs for fuel? And can we
I think we need a lot of
document that
exercise.
for the board? And so we've gone through that process before, and I assume we're still tracking that, so that we can provide that information to you, so you know what the district's costs are on top of the fuel costs.
The one valuable
But
thing
you
we've
wanna
learned here,
handle-
the one valuable thing we've learned here today is the best time to buy a car is at the end of the month.
Are you just finding that out? Everybody knows that. That's not even a trade secret. Okay.
Can I make two really quick points, just as follow-up? So number one, the fuel parameters are documented in the operations section of the admin code that's currently underway. It's being drafted. We probably won't have that ready for next meeting, but there's some other language in that section that we're working through right now. And number two, I just want to make sure to clarify this. We do separate the county funds. In the admin code, there's really no separation of property tax income that we get. There's just a definition of a general fund. But physically, those funds remain with the Kern County Treasurer, just to clarify that.
Well, I don't want any of our business funds commingled with the county funds.
Well, they're paying interest to us, aren't they? Yeah, so it is to our advantage to have it.
It's just
So is this an action item to get authority to do this right now?
Absolutely.
We're
I
gonna
make a
give
motion
some,
to approve the 50-cent
But-
discounted rate
I
that she's
second the
asking
motion.
for.
I second.
it's motion by Mr. Parker, seconded by everybody to the right of me. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna approve a 50-cent reduction out of some nebulous figure that we don't know is annual, weekly, monthly, hourly.
Correct.
I don't know how we're gonna do that, but I guess we're gonna do that. So, is there any public comment? Because I'd love to hear it. Okay. If there's no, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I vote, I don't know. Is that a vote?
Is that an abstain?
I don't know. You're giving me nothing to work with.
Well, I think.
I'll vote yes, just to be,
I think.
I vote yes, okay.
It's 50 cents.
It's 50 cents, thank you.
And she told us that was above our cost of fuel.
But let
I
me
mean,
just say
50
this.
cents is a wrapper, I don't even,
Let me just say this. Harold or someone adjusts fuel prices based on what you pay. So they know what that number is. They're not making it up.
no, I'm not
Right.
insinuating they are.
So,
But the board, that we don't know the number.
that's right. But
Doesn't
as an
disclose to us.
operational issue, operationally, it is being covered by staff.
But now
Hang on,
everybody knows
the
what
point of the
profit
conversation, yeah, exactly. The point of the conversation was, you came to the board, you asked for approval, to reduce the price basically to cost, not below cost, and you want that. Okay, we gave it to you. But cost was never disclosed to us. That's the nebulous figure. Why is it nebulous? Because nobody's describing cost to me, whether it is annually, weekly, monthly, by the minute,
Load.
whether,
By the load.
nobody's told
by
me.
the load.
It's by the load,
So-
yeah. Do you wanna give it a little bit?
I would assume it's by the load, but that, I don't know.
I think
Maybe
it's
wasn't
based
at
on
the
the
conference.
cost.
Maybe
Yeah,
they're trying to roll about it.
each load's different.
All right.
Yeah, each load is different, and then the
Yeah.
100
So,
load,
but
they buy
do we,
like
as
once
Karina
every
was
other
saying
month.
earlier,
Yeah.
We don't buy that
Move
much.
on.
do you want us to make a proposal in the operations policy that we're gonna be bringing to you?
I
for how to
do.
handle
I
this?
I do, I don't know if the board wants to.
I
I do.
I enjoy these
I
conversations.
agree.
I can make every conversation fun if you want.
Yeah, I would like to see it change, but
It's okay.
And you would like the authority delegated to the CEO?
I would, for the reason being that she's the one that knows the day-to-day functions going to operate. I don't, it's nice to know, but I don't necessarily want to know, and I don't think it's necessary to know, and I don't think it's the most efficient way.
Okay.
And
Enough
if
of
something
that.
happens, we can blame it on.
Bill, you just asked me to move on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm exhausted
Do we get-
now. I'm
I'll make
exhausted.
this really quick.
Thank you. 5A, financial report. Don't talk about fuel.
No, I'm not going
We've
to.
already
We're gonna
discussed it
move past
non-fuel.
fuel.
All right.
This is for month ending February 28th, for the month ending February, as we didn't have last meeting, so this is the February, so next meeting we'll bring the March. Financials, so bank balance is up 30,000. Attached is the financial report, we'll talk about the fuel report, and then the AR aging, just on a couple things. Continuous quality, Nancy Keller, REM, and X4, currently working with legal on those, just to resolve them as far as what the next point of action is. There's one new tenant on there, Maston. So as of right now, we are in communication with them and working on getting payment. And if we don't get payment by May 1st, we'll proceed forward.
Is there any update on the fitness center?
So I was actually gonna mention this in the CEO report,
Oh,
under
okay.
discussion items.
Thank you. Can we move on to the
Yes,
report?
let's move
Thank
on.
you very, very
Yes.
much. Appreciate that. That was very abbreviated, and I
Yes.
appreciate
What
it.
fuel service?
Daily, hourly, or monthly?
So on the fitness center, so I've been in communication with the management team about how to move forward. So as you know, in these reports, we're thinking about an additional $10,000 a month into the fitness center. And so I've been talking with them about what we're gonna do going forward. From Elevation's perspective, they don't wanna give up this early. They feel like they wanna give it at least 2 years before they, throw in the towel, or we throw in the towel for them on their behalf, I suppose. So I'm talking with them about what kind of changes are they willing to make to reduce this balance for us, or reduce the burden for us. And They have some ideas. I proposed to Angela that she plan to be here during the next board meeting, if the board's willing to entertain putting this on the agenda and actually having a discussion with them. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you today. I feel like they're making some good concrete steps forward, actionable things that they can implement soon. They don't really want to do that if they feel like there's a risk that we're just going to cancel the contract. Like, they don't want to make personnel changes, they don't want to make additional investments, if they feel like 30 years from now we're just going to cancel it. So they want some level of reassurance from us that we're going to stick around.
Looks like to me, whatever investment is our investment.
For sure. I mean, so they're, like, their employees, for instance, are Elevation employees. So for whatever reason we cancel the contract, they would have an obligation to try to find a different place to relocate them. So, I mean, there's a big business decision for them, I suppose. So is this something the board wants to consider?
Sure. I'll leave it open to the board's desire.
I would like to see it, I think that's what we should do.
And I'd like to hear what they're thinking.
I think whenever we're sinking 10 grand a month into something, it probably behooves the board to hear what's going on.
Yeah.
So there's 3 votes at least right there.
Okay.
So have it done.
So one of the exercises I've been going through is I have the whole membership list now, and trying to identify how many are airport employees versus just members of the community. With at least one of the reports back that I've gotten from a major employer, there are very, very few participants from them, but a lot from another. So I need to continue that.
I'm sorry, Counselor, I can't contain myself. I have the right to remain silent, but not the ability to do so. So we can't sell fuel in the cost, but we can subsidize 10 grand a month. Explain that one to me, Lucy. No, that's a serious question.
If the gym complained that you were unfairly competing, then we would have to look at it and see if that's the case.
In this instance, our location is good, because there's not another gym out here.
That's why we have a gym there, because there isn't one.
There's not another place to get fuel on the airport that I'm aware of either. I digress, all right.
Okay,
I thought it was a sound question.
You ought to run for public office sometime.
How many employees?
We're talking about 50 cents a gallon and we're spending 10 grand on this, and I'm thinking, this doesn't make sense.
It's quality of life.
So we,
Plus they have
Go ahead, Mr. Orange.
other personnel they bring in to do
Right,
things.
we sell 2,000
well, that's why I'm
gallons.
kind of curious, because why couldn't we hire on our own and,
Well, we talked about that
Right.
initially, and we decided we didn't want to be in the gym business.
Yeah.
well, it seems like we are already.
We're paying.
And
We're not
paying.
running the day-to-day operations.
We are in the gym business.
Or not.
All right, the consensus of the board is that we would like to
Okay.
have them come, so we can move on to the next item
The
then.
only other thing on the CO report that I don't have documented is just to mention that we did a job walk today for taxi property. So we'll do, we'll collect bids from those companies, and I think we've got bid opening in 2 weeks, I think.
Is it for the whole
April 27th.
length or just half?
How far did you walk?
So, the way we had to structure the bid, unfortunately, is, basically, it's kind of like, this is the minimum, and then there are 2 alternates to extend it all the way down. So, that's the way we had to structure the bid. I'm meeting with FAA ADO, the airport's folks tomorrow. They're gonna be out here doing a tour, so we're gonna run through some hangars and hopefully sit down with them and come up with a strategy for Mojave overall, get back on their radar.
Good.
Yeah, finally. That was all I really had to discuss.
Thank you. All right. We have no board committees. I've made all my comments. Are there any other director comments?
I have a couple of them. We talked a little bit about playing crazy. We got a really great speaker, a guy was a test pilot for the Air Force, for the Army Air Force in World War II. That should be interesting. And I came out here and had lunch with a couple of guys about trying to get some houses built at the Voyager, and as I was driving in and driving out, cutting down those oleanders and opening up that beautiful little field, that just totally improves.
Yeah.
And it would really be nice if
That's nice.
we could do something out
We're
there.
still working on it.
We would like, the chamber would like to donate the caboose and put it out there. Not, it would be closed, it would just be an artifact, but it would I'm sure it would bring some attraction and,
Yeah, I've been
Maybe
talking with Mel about that, and we're just
Yeah, you've
concerned
been
about,
talking with us, too.
upkeep, maintenance,
Right.
stuff like that. So it is a longer conversation about what that would entail if we were to move that over there. Plus, yeah,
you need to park, you need someplace for people to park, if that was someplace.
we can't put it there, we can't put parking there, because it's not very stable. We'd have to excavate that whole area.
Yeah, okay.
That's another challenge.
Well, we'd have to put maybe some kind of a fence so we could cut down on vandalism and that sort of thing. Anyway, it really looks much better than it did going through that little tunnel all the time, and it's much safer.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for noticing.
Thank you. Well,
Is there any
pay
other?
attention to what you guys are doing. And the signs look good. The only problem I have with the signs is black on gray. That's
Yeah.
kind of hard to read for old guys. I don't know about younger
Yeah,
people.
I'm noticing at least, I think the ones at the four-way stop are probably okay, but as you come down Airport Boulevard, you go through those signs
Yeah.
and it's pretty small.
And it's kind of small and it's just a color thing. There's no content.
I have a question, if we're done.
We're still doing director comments, so.
Intermediate Space Challenge kind of fell apart this year. Wanted to know what happened to it.
You heard anything, Harold?
Haven't heard from Marie at all.
Because on the school end, I can't get
Well,
any
it's always
answers on
been
that
Murray
end either.
Walker's.
I haven't heard, Pete, we
What
can
is
ask
it?
Marie.
Oh, yeah.
It's too late to do it this year. It's done.
Really?
Yeah, it's,
They usually do it, what, mid-May?
Yeah,
Early May, mid-May?
right.
but if the planning started way before that, the scheduling for kids to get over here and busing and everything else. It's too late to do it this year, but it's a shame because it was a great program.
It was.
For sure. That's, yeah, okay. I'll reach out to Marie and just find out.
Lots of
No.
fun.
Are there any other director comments?
No, but no, sir.
Okay. By the way, I really like the pictures of Mr. Savovich and Mr. Witt there.
Getting the plaque made for Stu now.
Where's your picture? I know you're very modest and you don't want your picture here, but it belongs to
Well, it's kind of like naming streets. You
I'll
wait
see that it gets
till
up there when she retires.
Stu might be concerned about that. All right.
Well, there is a street at Edwards named, there's one street out there named for a living pilot.
What street is that?
That's, used to be Mojave Boulevard, now it's named after the guy who broke the sound barrier.
Yeager?
Yeah, Chuck Yeager.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right,
Yeager.
I should have done
Yeah.
that. All right, if there are no further director comments, is there any public comment? Being none, we are going to move into closed session. Thank you very much for your attendance.